Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This week, Blister schools Muck on finding food. Will Muck get the honor roll he craves? Here's some food for thought. The world is a very different place from an animal's perspective. From a rat's point of view, the world is a rough and tumble cafeteria. Food might be everywhere, but it's really hard to access. But what about other animal perspectives? What's the world like when you live in a shell, or your skin is all scales? What if you're always covered in slime, or you slurp flower juices from a proboscis? I don't know about you, but to me, animals are like superheroes. Their unique abilities are superpowers. I mean, let's face it, seeing in the dark without added technology is a superpower for a human. So is flying. At the same time, the most powerful people don't always feel invincible. They have fears and worries, just like everyone else. Which is why I sometimes wonder whether butterflies ever yearn for prettier wings. Has a crocodile ever wished his scales didn't make his nose look so big? Was there ever a giraffe who hated how her ossicones poked up from her head? And if so, did she wish there was a gel or something she could use to slick those knobs down? What about you? Do you ever feel insecure? Ever wish there was something you could change about yourself so that you'd finally feel less like an outsider and more like you actually belonged? More like you were welcome and accepted anywhere you went? If so, have you ever considered turning the thing you don't like into the thing you love most so that it becomes your animal superpower? Here's an example. I used to hate my teeth. I had this huge gap between my two front teeth. To fix it, I had to wear these really goofy braces that looked worse than the great big gap. Be careful what you wish for, right? Well, the more I tried to hide my braces, the more other kids teased me. So, one day, I just went around smiling. I put my teeth and those awful braces on constant display. And wouldn't you know it, the other kids stopped teasing me. Well, about my braces anyway. They found other things about me to make fun of. Even so, I got into the habit of smiling so much that to this day, people always praise my smile. Here's one more example. Imagine you're a bombardier beetle, and your body contains this scalding hot acid. It never burns you, so no big deal. But on occasion, this acid has been known to spew from your butt. Could be super embarrassing, right? Well, the bombardier beetle turned this ability into a superpower. Whenever some other bug or bird tries to eat it, it unleashes its acid butt bath and escapes. So please know that even if you don't see yourself as perfect, even if you want to change things about yourself, even if your teeth are weird or your butt leaks dangerous chemicals, you belong in this world and deserve to be here. And if you let them, your weaknesses truly can become your strengths. Episode 12. Survival Lessons. The next day, Blister led Muck to Baker's Row. They traveled under dreary clouds, gray and schooled like tuna fish. Thick mist spread from the river fingers like bad breath. The air smelled of scales and salt. Baker's Row occupied much of the soot spill, the pinky finger branching off the black rust. The granaries lined up along one side of the water channel, and the bakeries lined up on the other. Outside the granaries, water wheels curtained in slick moss churned the scummy waters as they rotated. The wheels powered massive millstones. Round and round the millstones ground the slim, gold-grain pebbles into powdery flour, which was sacked and sold to the bakeries. Through wide windows, the bakeries displayed shelves of plump bread loaves, glazed pastries, thick cookies, layered cakes garlanded with frosting, fruit, and flowers. The nutty, yeasty, crusty perfume was an aroma oasis in the bitter fog. It attracted gangs of truant children draped in shabby clothes. Rather than attend the newly invented public schools, they roamed the streets playing kickball, marbles, or tag. They turned trash into toys. Old newspapers folded into hats and crowns. Rusted metal rims from carriage wheels became hoops to toss, roll and chase, or swing around the hips. Tin cans made music, and bits of brick drew red hopscotch paths on the sidewalks. The two rats cut through the fog unseen. Blister carried a short length of twine tied to a fishhook. "You've really outdone yourself," Muck practically sang. Really, he needed to ramble over the constant rumbling in his stomach. "What fantastic fun to fish for our food! Forge the fjords in search of our feast fortunes! Why, I had no idea rats fished."
"We're not going fishing," Blister said. "There are 3 things you need to learn to survive in the city."
Muck slouched. "Only 3? My, what a prudent prescription. I had no idea your teaching consisted of such frugal formulations of instructions. I shall be your grateful graduate in no time at all."
"Exactly. No time at all."
Blister clapped Muck's back. They cached themselves in an alley cut between brick bakeries. Both rats inspected the area for camouflaged metal and crackling batteries. Finding neither, Blister decreed the classroom was safe. He counted the lessons off on his fingers.
Lesson number 1, edible adoption. Lesson number 2, transportation. Lesson number 3, trash talk.
Muck perked up a little. Judging from the lesson titles, the learning seemed as though it might be both difficult and lengthy.
First thing is edible adoption.
Blister began his lecture.
Here in the city, you can't wait until nightfall to go pilfering a pantry. You've got to get your food whenever and wherever you can, and as often as you can. You follow me so far?
With abundant alacrity.
Unless you want to eat the slimy, rotten stuff sitting in trash bins, the easiest way to get food is not to steal it. Instead, adopt what has been forgotten. Tell me, Muck, do you like feeling alone, abandoned, or forgotten?
I should say not. In fact, I am avidly averse. Blister's approving nod was like a checkmark.
Nothing likes to be forgotten, not even food. So when you see some that has been abandoned, you adopt it for your very own.
Muck raised his paw timidly. But, my dear Blister, if I may posit a postulation, none of the food here looks at all forgotten. Quite the opposite. See how attractively it has been placed on desirous display. It begs to be ravenously remembered. Muck's gut gurgled. He wrapped his arms over his belly and apologized.
Doesn't matter. Humans are the most forgetful creatures. Watch.
Blister scaled the brick wall. He traveled around to the building's front facade. He crawled under the big awning perched over the entrance of Le Petit Gâteau Bakery. Soon after, the fishhook dangled down. Blister moose-grinned when he signaled Muck to wait and watch. The pick-pick of slender boot heels broke through the fog as a woman approached the bakery. She carried shopping sacks crammed with wrapped parcels, fruit, and vegetables. Blister retreated under the awning, and the hook disappeared with him. Brilliant business! Muck clapped his paws with delight, initially assuming Blister was going to hook food out of the sacks. But his excitement drained away when he surmised that the distance between the awning and the sacks was beyond the twine's reach. The woman pushed open the bakery door. A jolly bell jingled as she entered. Several minutes passed before the woman exited the bakery with golden bread loaves added to the sacks. As she passed under the awning, the hook dropped and grabbed her hat. The current fashion trend in women's headgear mandated hats so broadly brimmed and so fatly feathered or flowered that hat pins were needed to secure the accessory to the wearer's head. The long pins skewered through both hat and hairdo. When Blister's hook snagged the hat and pin snagged the woman's hair. "Ack!" she shrieked. To free herself, she dropped the shopping sacks and groped through the flowers and feathers for the hat pin. Meanwhile, Blister deftly retracted the hook and dropped like a stone into the sacks. He clambered out, dragging a whole loaf of bread back to the alley. The woman never noticed. "Capital! Bully!" Muck cheered as Blister displayed the prize.
See how she forgot all about that wonderful food?
She was indeed a distracted damsel, a muddled mademoiselle, a lax lass. Blister broke off a hunk of the bread. Steam coiled out. Muck smacked his tongue around his jaws and whiskers. His paws, normally bound in a nervous knot, rubbed greedily together.
Well, what are you waiting for? Go give it a try.
Blister shooed Muck away. Then he crammed the bread hunk into his mouth. Initially, Muck soggied from the inside out. Then he puffed his chest, climbed the brick wall, and tucked himself under the awning. This time, Blister watched as the hook rose up and out of sight. Muck missed the first target by dropping the hook a moment too late. On his next attempt, he snagged a flower from the passing hat. He successfully caught the third woman to exit the bakery. At first, Blister cheered from the alley. Then he said, "Uh-oh." Forgetting to retract the hook, Muck dove from under the awning. Instead of landing in the sack of pastry purchases, he landed on the victim's chest. You should know, this accident did not result from gross incompetence on Muck's part. Many other factors did not align in his favor. For instance, the lady Blister hooked wisely set down her bags and unpinned her hat. By contrast, the woman Muck caught flailed in a wild panic. Is it any wonder she wound up with a rat on her chest? "Rat!" the woman howled. Muck barely made it back to the alley, but the commotion attracted a crowd of people. Le Petit Gâteau's clerk left the register to rescue the woman. He freed her from the hat, then freed the hat from the hook. Finally, he yanked the string off the awning's metal framework and yelled at the nearest band of children to stop playing pranks.
"Dung in the gutter!" Blister exclaimed. "We lost our hunting tool."
"Oh, Blister, I am sorry." Muck wrapped his tail around his paws and sulked. He stretched his nose close to the remaining half of the bread loaf and sniffed longingly.
"It's okay. I have another idea. There's an omnibus stop not far from here. Plenty of ladies put down their shopping bags while they wait. Come on."
Blister wrapped his tail around the bread and carried it against his back as he jogged on all fours. He did not make it far along the sidewalk before several people squalled, "Rat!" Blister ducked behind the base of a light pole and watched as Muck backpedaled from the sudden hailstorm of shoes, parcels, and bottles launched at him. When the kerfuffle died down, Muck tried again to dash down the sidewalk and join Blister. Even though he ran as fast as he could, he still got the same results. People noticed, screamed, and chucked things at him. Blister returned to the alley.
"Sorry, Muck, old chap. I got so focused on lesson 1, I skipped over lesson 2.
Muck plopped down on his round rump and crossed his arms over his chest. I quit.
What do you mean?
I mean, I quit completely. I resign rancorously. I surrender savagely and severely. I am not cut out for city survival, urban urgency, metropolitan metabolism. None of it is for me. I am hopeless, and I am terribly tired and fiendishly famished. I've had nothing to eat since the popcorn, so just leave me here, Blister. I am a lax learner, a pointless pupil. Perhaps I'll make a better meal for the wharf rats. Throughout Muck's grousing, Blister absently chewed away at the bread loaf. But he slowly became aware that he didn't enjoy the taste of bread any more. He didn't know why. It was still deliciously fresh, still crunchy on the crust and downy soft on the inside. But to his mouth, it had gone bland and dull. Before he could stop himself, he tossed the remaining hunk of bread on Muck's lap.
Here, he said. I took my half of your portion. That was our agreement, right?
Muck sat in shock, cradling the bread. Then he nodded and said, You've expressed our concordance concisely. Blister thought he saw moisture rimming around Muck's eyes. He wasn't sure, so he didn't mention it. As soon as Muck packed away the bread, Blister began.
When you lived in your fancy mansion, how did you get around? In the walls?
Of course. Blister folded his paws behind his back and paced his lecture.
And here in Blackrust, we haven't had to worry about getting around since we've traveled early mornings, late evenings, or by bear, or by rain tunnel. Places and times when people are scarce. But to survive, you can't plot your life around those times or places. You've got to be able to go where you want, whenever you want. You with me?
I do sense the sagacity of your statement, Muck said.
Good. So all a rat has to do is move around without being seen, like so.
Blister strolled out of the alley. As ladies ballooned along the sidewalk in their gigantic dresses, Blister waltzed around the skirt hems swishing by. He slid between the men's boots and brogues. No one screamed. No one whacked down brooms. No one threw bottles. What a fabulous feat! An amazing array of poised pluck! Muck applauded when Blister returned. So you're saying the trick is to just move slowly? Casually cascade rather than rapidly race?
No, Blister said. The trick is to walk the world knowing you belong in it. You deserve to be here. You've got to wear that confidence like a cloak, and then no one will bother you.
After a skeptical pause, Muck said, But if I strut around in an arrogant attitude, then aren't I more likely to be seen?
Firstly, confidence is not arrogance. It's life without a doubt. Doubtless is dauntless. What sticks out is fear. Trembling, nervous, hasty fear.
As he concluded, Blister slumped and knotted his tail around his paws. He let his whiskers sag and his ears slope back. Muck surveyed Blister, then himself. Oh my, is that what I look like?
Only all the time, Blister said. Buck up, ears up, paws down, tail out. Don't you know you belong in the world? You deserve to be here. Say it.
Muck's new rigid posture slackened as he asked, Say what?
Say I deserve to be here.
I deserve to be here?
No. Say it like you mean it.
I deserve to be here.
Better. Now keep saying it over and over in your head as you patrol that sidewalk without being seen.
Muck stiffly stomped out of the alley. At first, no one screamed. He moved around hems and avoided the heavy work boots. Elated, Muck assumed the hero's stance, clasping his paws together overhead and shaking them first to his left side and then to his right. Too busy congratulating himself, he failed to notice he was in the path of a gentleman's stride. Boof! He sailed like a football and bounced off a lady's skirt.
Uh-oh, Blister said.
Rat!
Disgusting! Kill it!
Men stomped at Muck as if he were a beetle.
Catch it!
Chorused the gang of truant children.
That rat's worth 22 cents.
They chased after Muck, using old tin cans for traps. One boy chanted,
2 pennies, 2 dimes, buy a tub of candy limes.
Blister darted into the fray and pulled Muck under the great bell of a lady's dress. She screeched as the children dove into her petticoats. The ensuing tussle of tassels, ribbons, crinoline, and bloomers spurred heroic gentlemen to chase the children, swatting them with their newspapers. The rats escaped to an alley and hid behind a rubbish bin. While Muck panted, Blister sighed. He could sense the sun easing down toward the ocean, the way an egg eased into a pot of boiling water. When his whiskers drooped this time, it was not an imitation of Muck. He had hooked all his hopes on teaching Muck all 3 lessons in one day. Actually, he had felt sure he could teach all 3 by midday, giving him plenty of time to point Muck in the direction of some of Blackrust's nicer, safer neighborhoods. Then he could return home, alone, and resume his one-for-one and none-for-all lifestyle.
Come on, Muck. Time to go home,
Blister said, and they traveled under clouds as dark, toothy, and finned as sharks. Blister is understandably crestfallen. His survival lessons with Muck did not pan out. His plan went awry. Somehow that troublesome Silver Whisker has got to go. The sooner the breader. Tune in next week. My producers are signaling me to get on with the credits. I realize they have the power to shut off my mic, but they can't ban me from making bread puns, especially on a show that is listener-supported and taking donations. If you're in a position to give financially, visit blisterandmuck.com and click Support the Show. You can also support the show by sharing it with your friends. Use the contact form at blisterandmuck.com to tell me what surprised you in this episode. What animal superpowers would you like to have? If you click the subscribe button, you'll get an email from the Blister and Muck producers as soon as the newest episode releases. My thanks to Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Deezer, Radio Public, and the many other platforms that make this show available to listeners around the world. Special thanks to composer Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional music from Komiku and Mon Plaisir. Art for Noise at Pond 5 provided the lapping water. Hope in Awe brought the crowd and Mike Koenig made the rumble. Thanks to Daniel Simon for the scary sounds. And the biggest thanks goes to my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.